All right, another look at waves today. There are so many different ways to do the aesthetic of a waveform. So one of them, actually, let's go back to the dribble page that we looked at a couple days ago. I think we looked at it on Tuesday. Here we go. Let's switch like this. Let's bring this onto this page. And now you can have a look at my desktop. There we go. Okay, so here I am looking at our dribble page. My profile, or our profile, is here. We have a few collections, and in one of those collections was waveforms. And of those waveforms, I am specifically thinking of something that has an aesthetic like this, where this wave is kind of going up and down. Now, you can use this technique for a variety of different things, but if I went also and just searched again for waveforms, and let me just go ahead and do this, and I think the mouse cursor is back on. There we go. And we do some sort of animation on that waveform. Thanks, Dribble. Well, let's try waveform like this. And hit animation again. There we go, we get something like that. See that? Let's go and look a little bit closer in on this one. There, something like this. All right, where you have these lines sort of moving and transitioning. Now, getting something dynamic like this is not the easiest. Maybe it's just not the easiest to craft, but I'm going to show you some sort of technique that would allow you to get close to this. Let me see if there's a better example in here. I thought I saw one the other day. No. Yeah, something like that. There's another example. Okay, so how do you do something like that? And not the entire animation, but let's just look there. This, how do you do something like that? Okay, so what you're going to be wanting to do is you're going to be wanting to work with a longer line. There you go. Something like this too. Something like that. Okay, so how do you get that effect of the lines, not necessarily the fade or the static effect of the, sorry, not the colorization effect. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at more like the form of these waves moving like that, okay? So the first thing that we can look at a standing wave. And I'm going to start, usually I start with the building of something to explain the structure, but this one's a little bit more complicated, so I'm just going to start with the animation. So here is a standing wave animation. So how do you get that? I mean, one of the first ideas that you might have is something along these lines. Well, I have this wave, I have this shape sitting right in the middle of the screen, and it's kind of doing this wavy thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move the endpoint up and the endpoint down, and I'm going to try and shift the I'm going to shift the control points so that it actually animates the whole time. Now, if you start to go down this route, and I'm not even going to try going down this route, but if you start to go down this route, it's going to be really difficult to get a really nice smooth animation because because there's so many different variables that are happening, okay? And there's so much symmetry, and to get that nice smoothness, you're gonna just have to be super precise with your animations and moving the points around. But there's another way that we can think about this. And again, this always goes back to those first sort of initial flowcasts where we're talking about perception. It appears that wave is standing, that it's just going up and down and creating this motion. Now, one of the things you can tell is that it's not clipping, right? It's not clipping because at every moment you see this nice round corner. But now when I start highlighting, you can see the structure a bit more. Okay, so this shape is actually two perfect sine waves, or periods of a sine curve. let's go to the beginning. And I'm just going to duplicate this timeline. And I'll just call this deconstructed. All right. And I'm going to delete the animation. And I'm going to select this. And then I'm going to change its endpoint to 1 with relative mode on. So, and I'm going to zoom out. This is actually what our wave looks like. Okay? It's two periods, two identical periods. So down, up, back to the middle, down, up, back to the middle. And what's actually happening is, I'm just going to copy this key value from the end. I can go back to the deconstructed, and here at 1, I'm going to paste that key value. What's happening is it's just moving like that. Now it's moving in a linear fashion, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, but our shape is just moving. Our shape isn't going anywhere. Okay. I mean, it's not distorting. It is going somewhere. It's just not distorting. Okay, so now when we have this happening like that, it's really easy to see that motion, that it's moving back and moving side to side. And even if we go ahead and clip that, you can see it. You can perceive that motion. All right. And I'd like to think that maybe you can perceive it is because what you're seeing is you're seeing the end shift this way. And even though the two motions are identical in both animations, just because you can see the beginning and the end sort of come into position, your eye is going to see it a little bit differently. And so we can actually see this motion. So what we're actually doing in order to get that standing wave style, right, is to do something like this. So at the beginning, we're setting it so that the end point, okay, is at 0.5. This is at the beginning. The end point is at 0.5. So it's only drawing half of that 2-period arc. Let me switch. So I was just showing that at the beginning of the animation, the endpoint is at 0.5. If it's at 1, and we have our stage masking off, this is what it looks like. Now at the beginning, and we can just turn on relative mode now, or turn it off, we start bringing that down like that, right? Down all the way to 0.5. This is what we're actually drawing. And as it goes along, okay, it's drawing the rest of that shape. So let's clip, zoom in, and play. You see? See, we're not changing the motion of our animation, but now it looks like this end is going up and down. See how that perception changes even though you see how that perception changes even though we haven't really changed the motion? Because it starts there and the visual part of that wave is in the exact same place. It looks like it's going up and down. Okay, it looks like it's starting to distort. Now the second part of this is that at the end of the animation, we're also going to bring that endpoint to 0.5. Now, why are we bringing that one to 0.5? At the beginning of our animation, the endpoints are 0 and 0.5. At the end of our animation, there's 0.5 and 1. So what's going to happen now is the beginning of the wave, or the beginning of the shape, is going to travel along at the same pace as the end of the shape. So it's going to draw from the beginning to the middle of the entire shape, and then as it's moving, it's drawing just half of that shape the entire time. All right. This is what gives us that perceptual look like that wave is animating. Okay. It looks like it's distorting. It looks like it's kind of whipping, right? Now, what else is happening here? We have an easing curve, and so it's giving us this pause at the beginning and the end. So our X motion and our stroke start and our stroke end motions are all in sync, but what is sort of causing it to not look like it's constantly going up and down is the pacing of the animation. And what we want to do is we want that to be nice and linear. So I'm going to select all three and I'm going to choose them to be linear. I'm going to close that window and now I'm going to loop it. And there we have that standing wave. And if you select that object, okay, what's happening is it's moving. You see that? The shape is moving, the endpoints are moving, but the center of the aesthetic part of that shape, the center of the stuff that's being rendered or drawn, it stays in place. It visually stays in place, even though it's not. And then because of the symmetry of everything, and symmetry is really important here, because of the symmetry of everything, the end state looks identical to the beginning state. See that? I'm just clicking forwards and backwards at the timeline to jump between the beginning and the end. And the only thing we can see changing is the frame. And when it loops back to the beginning. So we turn on linear, everything is linear, and when it loops, it goes right back to the way that it looked at the beginning of the animation, and that gives us that nice, consistent looking standing wave. Okay, so as I mentioned, symmetry is important. With this technique, symmetry is important because you need, not only do you need the beginning and the end to look the same, but along the way, okay, along the way as it's animating, if the line is stretching in odd ways or it's not symmetric, that pacing of the stroke start and stroke end is going to change. It's going to shift a little bit. Let me show you an example. So completely messed this one up. I'm so focused on flow. What I'll do is I'll just go back. I'll do it all again. Okay. I don't even know where I started. Okay, so what I was doing is I was showing that with a particular line that we copied from Sketch, you can actually get these nice effects that look like that. Now, if the aesthetic that you're going for is something where it doesn't matter if the beginning and the ends overlap like that, you're just creating like a single longer animation, you could actually do this kind of tracing over a long shape. And here, just for context, if I go back to Sketch, this is what that long shape looks like. It's just a random set of points, and I'm just animating along that whole thing. So you could do something like that, and then you can combine it. And what you can try to do is you can try to sync the beginning and the end points of that animation. So for instance, all right, I came into Flow, and what I did is I synced the position of the first point. So the first 4 points are in the exact same positions as the last 4 points. And what I can do here is I can go and with my shape, I can determine at the beginning at what point the endpoint would be so that it covers just covers. All right, it just barely covers the first 4 points of my shape. Okay, because those are the ones that are in sync with one another. So the first 4 and the last 4 are in the same positions, basically. And so it looks like this it's a little bit off here. So what I might do is I might just go and bring this to the left by 1 point. And what I would do here is I would bring this to the left by 1 point, something like that. Oh, this is the wrong line, sorry. This is the not symmetric line. I'm going to hide this one. I'm going to show that one. So this would be the symmetric line where the beginning and the end, yes, the beginning and the end are in sync here. So what I can do is I can measure at the beginning here. Boom, boom, boom. I can measure the endpoint by just bringing it back so that it covers that last point right there. See that? And now this is my shape like that. I can move it sort of into the middle. And what I will do here, we can get rid of that Y animation. The X animation is okay. And I'm going to bring it back so that at the end of the animation, my stroke end is at 1. And the original one was at 0.2. Easy. So this is going to be 0.8. And then we're going to move this whole thing into position so that it looks like it overlaps with the beginning. And the way that I can check that is I can click in here and I can just hit the left and right key back and forth. So it looks like if I'm at the end, I go back to the beginning, I'm just shifted at the end by a little bit. So let's click on the stage. Let's bring that back by a few points. Click in the timeline, press forward, back, and now we got to go. We're just going to shift it a little bit. And I'm just using the hotkeys there. You see that? It's super close. And at the beginning, looks like we got to come forward just to the left by 1 point. And now that's super tight there. You see that? Now I'm going to be able to loop those things. So let's have a look. There you go. There you go. You see? Now we go like this. We click like this. And we make that linear. Let's make our screen large. And do something like this. Right. So now we're getting this random shape happening. Okay. So you can use the same principles as this standing wave, this sort of like symmetric standing wave, but once you bring in a not symmetric one, you really have to start figuring out how to like match the beginnings and endpoints of that shape, and then just tweak the path drawing or like the stroke start and stroke ends to match up with the motion of that thing, and then you can sync the beginning, you can visually sync the beginning and the end of the positioning so that it doesn't blip, and then you get this nice standing wave just like we're showing here. But it's not a wave, it's more just like this thing happening. Then this I would put on you because you guys are all the fantastic animators, the creative geniuses. You can combine this technique with maybe 5, 10, 15 different lines. You can change the opacities of those things. You can overlap them and play with them in different ways. You could add dash patterns to them, and then you start to get these really nice, complicated, wavy looking animations happening together, okay? So again, this is the technique that we're showing, and it's actually a really flexible one. The first one that we showed was that standing wave, okay? And it's basically the same technique. Remember, everything is about what you see, what your brain thinks it's seeing. So we're not distorting the shape during our animations. We just have this super long shape and we're moving across it and we're animating over top of that thing at the same time. And that's going to give you that randomness and make it easier to do these kinds of things than you would imagine. All right? So I will talk to you soon, and we're going to look at one more way of randomizing and working with these shapes to get this jittery kind of wave effect of a single line. It's sort of a blend between what we're doing here and what we were doing on Monday and Tuesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay, talk to you tomorrow.